Two Clear Creek County Sheriff's deputies involved in the shooting death of a 22-year-old Boulder man who called for help after crashing his car were indicted by a grand jury Wednesday and fired, authorities said. The Clear Creek Sheriff's Office announced the indictment and firing of Andrew Bune and Kyle Gould on Wednesday night, saying, in a news release, that it was part of a painful but necessary process. Court records show Bune, who shot and killed Christian Glass, was indicted on charges of second-degree murder, official misconduct and reckless endangerment. The grand jury indicted Gould on charges of criminally negligent homicide and reckless endangerment. 5th Judicial District Chief Judge Paul Dunkelman sealed the indictment and issued arrest warrants Wednesday for Bune and Gould, according to a news release from the 5th Judicial District Attorney's Office. Bail is set at $50,000 for Bune and $2,500 for Gould. The two men are expected to have court dates set for mid-December, according to the District Attorney's Office. Glass parents, Simon and Sally, are relieved appropriate charges have been brought against some of those responsible for the murder of their son, their attorney, Siddhartha H. Rothode, of the Rothode Mohammed Bai LLC firm, said in a statement. However, justice for Christian will require all those involved being held accountable, Rothode said. Christian's death is a stain on every officer who was present and failed to prevent the escalation and unnecessary uses of force. Glass called 911 on the night of June 10 after crashing his car into an embankment near Silver Plume. 7 officers and deputies from 5 different law enforcement agencies responded and spent an hour trying to convince Glass, who was experiencing delusions and paranoia, to exit his vehicle. Glass had told a dispatcher that he had 2 knives in the car and offered to throw them out the window. But he was told not to. The deputies and officers ultimately decided to break a window to try to remove Glass, and he responded by picking up one of the knives. Bune shot and killed Glass when he thrust the knife in the direction of an officer standing near the driver's side backseat window that had been smashed out. The shooting death of Christian Glass continues to be a devastating event for Christian's family, friends, the Clear Creek County community and the Sheriff's Office, sheriff's officials said in the news release. District Attorney Heidi McCullum in October announced she would be presenting the shooting to a grand jury to determine whether criminal charges should be brought against law enforcement officers. Sheriff Rick Albers also asked the Douglas County Sheriff's Office to conduct an investigation of the shooting. That investigation is still underway, Clear Creek County Sheriff's officials said, but preliminary findings show there were policy and procedural failures, and the initial news release about the shooting, based on the information available at the time of the incident, does not reflect the entirety of what happened on that terrible night. That news release said Glass immediately became argumentative and uncooperative and that he was shot after he tried to stab an officer. Experts who reviewed body camera footage of the incident told the Denver Post that the responding law enforcement officers needlessly rushed the situation and failed to de-escalate matters while Glass suffered a mental health crisis. He trusted the police to come and help him, Simon Glass said of his son in September. Instead, they attacked and killed him. Attorneys for Glass family on Tuesday publicly released hours of body camera footage depicting the shooting and said officers never should have escalated the situation to the point where lethal force was considered. There was no need to threaten him with force, to draw guns, to break his car window, to fire beanbag rounds from a close distance, to tase him, to shoot him dead, the Rothode Mohammed Bai law firm said in a news release. From beginning to end, the officers on scene acted unconscionably and inhumanely. Glass family called on the 5th Judicial District Attorney's Office, the Colorado Attorney General's Office and the United States Attorney for the state of Colorado to prosecute the officers involved in the shooting. Glass lived in Boulder and was an artist, chef and avid tennis player with many hobbies. The night he was killed, he was returning from a rock hunting trip. He wasn't accused of any crime, his family's attorneys said. During the hour-long negotiations with Glass, the Colorado State Patrol trooper on scene talked to his supervisor. The audio was captured on the trooper's dashboard camera. "Can you ask Clear Creek what their plan is?" the supervisor asked. "If there's no crime and he's not suicidal, homicidal or a great danger, then there's no reason to contact him." 20 minutes later, Glass was dead. "We're not going to shoot you." In his call to 911, Glass repeatedly told the call taker that his car was stuck and he was afraid. He told her he had 2 knives and a rubber mallet when she asked if he had any weapons, but said he would throw them out the window when deputies arrived. Dispatch audio provided to the Denver Post by Glass family attorney shows. "I'm not dangerous, I will keep my hands completely visible," he told the call taker. Dispatch operators told the 2 Clear Creek County deputies sent to the scene, Andrew Bune and Tim Collins, that Glass had 2 knives and that he sounded paranoid. Glass told her skinwalkers were after him and that his car was stuck in a trap. When they arrived, Glass held his hands out the driver's side window but refused to step outside of the car when the deputies asked him to because he was afraid. Glass asked if they were going to shoot him. "No, dude, we're not going to shoot you, but we need you to come here," Collins said. When Glass rolled up his window and refused to come out, Bune ordered him to take the keys out of the ignition. He complied but still refused to get out of the car, saying he needed to get pulled off the embankment. 2 minutes into the interaction, Bune started yelling at Glass, telling him to step out or he'd be forcefully removed from the car. As Collins placed stop strips behind the car, Glass offered to throw the knives out of the window. Bune told him not to. More officers are called to the scene as Bune and Collins hold Glass at gunpoint after Glass took a knife near his lap and tossed it to the other side of the car. Glass immediately held both his hands above the steering wheel after throwing the knife aside, and the deputies eventually lower their weapons. Over the next hour, Bune, Collins, and the 5 other officers who arrived on the scene from Idaho Springs Police, the Colorado Division of Gaming, Colorado State Patrol, and Georgetown Police tried to talk to Glass and get him to step out of the car. They offered him soda, cigarettes, and beef jerky, but Glass wouldn't come out. Several times the officers acknowledged they had time to wait and don't need to rush the interaction, especially since he was contained in the car. They also acknowledged he was having a psychological crisis. "We've got time," Collins said shortly after pointing his gun at Glass. "Until we don't. He's not going anywhere for a while." During the ongoing negotiations, the Colorado State Patrol trooper on scene spoke with his sergeant about whether there was a plan and whether Glass posed a threat. The trooper then asked Georgetown Police Marshal Randy Williams about potential risk, and Williams said Glass wasn't suicidal and that he probably took something, the dashboard camera footage shows. When the trooper asked what the plan was, another officer on scene responded that it was the Clear Creek Sheriff's Office's decision. 15 minutes later, the trooper asked the other officers on scene whether they planned to arrest Glass. "So what's the plan? Are you guys charging or trying to get him help?" the trooper asked. "We're just trying to get him help," one of the other officers responded and explained they were trying to detain him for a mental health hold. 52 minutes into the encounter, the officers decide to break the window and physically pull Glass out. Glass grabbed a knife again after officers try and fail to open his door. Several pull out their guns and Collins gets on the hood of the car, pointing his gun down at Glass. After 15 more minutes of trying to get Glass to step out, Williams told Glass that they were going to break out the window because it's time to move the night on. 2 minutes later, Bune broke out the passenger window with his baton. Glass grabbed the knife again, screaming, and all the officers yelled at him to drop it. Bune fired 6 beanbags at him and another officer tossed him in an attempt to get him to drop the knife. Glass did not drop the knife and yells at the officers, "I'm going to kill every single one of you if you don't stop, you can save yourselves." Glass, still seated in the driver's seat, then twisted and thrust the knife toward the broken-out window behind his seat, where Williams stood. Bune then shot him 5 times, after which Glass stabbed himself multiple times. When they pulled him out of the car, he was unresponsive. None of the officers were injured. The news release, written by Undersheriff Bruce Snelling, did not mention that Glass was seated in the driver's seat when he allegedly tried to stab an officer, though he did tell the Clear Creek Courant that the suspect did not leave the car. The press release does not describe why officers decided to break out the car windows. It also did not mention that officers on scene had identified him as likely having a mental health crisis. The body camera footage captured Collins speaking with Albers after the scene. "I swear to, expletive, sir, we tried everything," Collins told the sheriff. "If you did everything you can, that's what counts to me," Albers responded. But Glass's family doesn't think the officers did everything they could. Instead, officers took a gentle, peaceful soul and extinguished it simply because it was time to move the night on. The act of simply calling 911 for help cannot be a death sentence, the family's attorneys said. People in distress need help, not force.
"I'm glad these cops have been charged criminally because blue crimes matter and need to be prosecuted like any other crime. That being said, if you or a loved one is experiencing a crisis, do not call 911. You are summoning people whose purpose is to save people from violent criminals. Please dial 988. Those are the professionals that are trained to help."